You ever look at a map and notice that huge white space at the top of the world and think, what's even out there? Because most people imagine Greenland as nothing but endless ice and silence. But honestly, it's way more alive than you'd expect. And before we dive deeper, if you're into stories about hidden places like this, consider subscribing to the channel because it really helps keep these journeys going. And now imagine standing on the edge of a glacier while the Arctic wind moves across the landscape like it's telling an old story. Because Greenland isn't just remote, it's a place that quietly holds thousands of years of human survival. And long before satellites or modern borders existed, the first people arrived here by following animals across frozen paths, stepping into a world that looked impossible, but somehow became home. And they didn't see emptiness. They saw opportunity. They learned to read the ice like a map and the sky like a clock, building lives that depended on patience and deep respect for nature. And over generations, Inuit cultures shaped the rhythm of life here, passing knowledge through stories rather than textbooks, creating a connection to the land that still exists today. Then, centuries later, Norse explorers sailed west from Iceland, and this is where things start to feel almost cinematic, because one of them, Eric the Red, named the island Greenland, maybe as a clever way to attract settlers, which honestly sounds like the first marketing trick in history, and for a while it worked. Small Norse communities appeared along the fjords, building farms and churches, trying to bring a piece of Europe into an Arctic wilderness, and you can almost picture those early settlers looking out at drifting icebergs, wondering whether they had found paradise or just a beautiful challenge. And if you enjoy this kind of deep storytelling, don't forget to subscribe and join the journey, because there's a lot more to uncover. Life here was never easy though, and as the climate shifted during the Little Ice Age, trade routes faded and the Norse settlements slowly disappeared, leaving behind stone ruins that still stand against the wind like quiet mysteries, while Inuit communities adapted and continued, proving that survival in Greenland has always belonged to those willing to listen to the land rather than fight it. And as European exploration grew, Greenland became a place of fascination, explorers mapping coastlines that felt endless, sailors navigating waters filled with moving ice mountains, each expedition adding another layer to the island's story, and eventually Danish missions and trading posts reshaped Greenland's political path, bringing Christianity, education, and new economic systems that changed daily life in ways that were both helpful and complicated. Because history here isn't simple, it's a mix of adaptation, resilience, and difficult choices that still echo today. By the time the 20th century arrived, scientists realized Greenland's massive ice sheet wasn't just beautiful, it was one of the planet's most important climate archives, storing frozen memories of Earth's past. And during World War II, the island suddenly became strategically important, weather stations and airfields turning this remote land into a key part of global events, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. A place that feels so far away influencing the course of history, and after the war, modernization began to accelerate. Towns connected by sea and air rather than roads, colorful houses standing out against endless white landscapes, and communities balancing traditional hunting with modern technology. Satellite dishes sharing space with sled dogs, a reminder that Greenland is always evolving. If you're finding this journey interesting so far, take a second to subscribe, because every bit of support helps bring more stories like this to life. And speaking of evolution, Greenland's political identity has changed too, gaining home rule in 1979 and expanded autonomy in 2009, sparking conversations about independence and the future. And today, the island stands at a crossroads, not just culturally, but environmentally, because climate change is reshaping the Arctic faster than anywhere else. Glaciers retreating, sea ice shifting, and scientists from around the world coming here to study what these changes mean for the entire planet and for the people who live here. It's not just a headline, it's something they see every day. Fishing routes changing, seasons feeling different than they did for their grandparents, and yet there's still a strong sense of pride and community that shines through in local art, music, and storytelling. As the camera moves across deep fjords and towering icebergs that drift silently through cold blue water, you realize Greenland has a kind of quiet beauty that doesn't try to impress you. It just exists, steady and powerful, and when the northern lights ripple across the sky like waves of green fire, it feels less like watching a documentary and more like sharing a moment with a friend who says, "You have to see this." And that's really the spirit of this channel too, exploring places that feel distant, but reminding us how connected the world actually is. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe and stick around because the journey is just getting started. Beyond the landscapes, Greenland's story is really about people, small communities where everyone knows each other, where traditions meet modern challenges, where young voices talk about independence and sustainability, while elders remember a time when the ice felt more predictable. And this mix of old and new creates a culture that feels grounded yet forward-looking, especially as global attention turns toward the Arctic for new shipping routes and natural resources, bringing both opportunity and risk. And you can sense that Greenland's future will be shaped by choices made right now, balancing economic growth with respect for nature and heritage. And as we travel through remote villages, reachable only by boat or helicopter, it becomes clear that remoteness isn't about being forgotten. It's about perspective, about understanding that life here moves at a different pace, one guided by seasons and community rather than constant noise. Sometimes the silence itself feels like a character in the story, a reminder that not every place needs to be crowded to matter. And as the sun dips low over a glacier older than recorded history, casting golden reflections across frozen water, you start to feel the weight of time here. Layers of human experience blending with the natural world, and maybe that's what makes Greenland so fascinating. It challenges our assumptions, showing that the most remote place on Earth can also be deeply connected to global history, climate, and culture. And if you've enjoyed traveling through this story together, subscribing is the best way to support more cinematic journeys like this one, because there are still so many hidden places left to explore. The more you learn about Greenland, the more it feels less like a frozen wilderness and more like a living timeline, from ancient hunters to modern scientists, from Norse settlers to today's communities shaping their own future, all connected by a landscape that demands respect and curiosity. And as our journey comes full circle, pulling back from the icy coastline to reveal endless white stretching toward the horizon, it's hard not to feel a sense of wonder about how much of the world still waits quietly beyond the headlines. And maybe that's why stories like this matter, because they remind us that exploration isn't just about distance. It's about understanding, about seeing beyond stereotypes, about listening to voices that don't always get heard. And if you want to keep discovering places that feel real, cinematic, and deeply human, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next. Because this is only one chapter in a much bigger journey, and somewhere out there, beyond another stretch of ice and sky,